Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
Chapter 1. Rachel Monroe saw the bedroom light go dark from the back seat of a taxi, and in that single second, her marriage stopped feeling like a question. Her husband was supposed to be in Chicago. That was what Daniel had told her that morning while kissing her forehead with one hand already on his suitcase. 3 days of investor meetings, a late return on Thursday. Do not wait up. Get some rest. Rachel had believed him because belief was easier than suspicion, and because she was tired of feeling like the kind of wife who counted shadows. But at 9:42 that night, the taxi turned onto Maple Crescent, rain shining under the streetlights, and Rachel looked up at the third-floor window of her own bedroom just in time to see the warm lamp inside snap off. Not flicker. Not dim. Go dark. The taxi slowed at the curb. Rachel did not move. Her driver glanced into the mirror. "This is the address, ma'am." Rachel's hand tightened around the strap of her overnight bag. She had come home a day early from her aunt's house because a storm had canceled the morning appointment and because she missed her own bed. She had bought Daniel's favorite pear tart at the station, a silly peace offering for a man who had been distant for months. The tart sat in a white box on her lap. Through the rain-streaked window, her townhouse looked exactly as it always did. Pale stone front, black railings, boxwood planters by the steps. The house her grandmother had left her. The house Daniel called theirs whenever guests admired it, and hers whenever taxes or repairs came due. The bedroom window stayed dark. Then a shadow moved behind the curtain. Rachel felt her breath disappear. The driver cleared his throat. "Mom?" "Keep the meter running," Rachel said. Her voice sounded calm enough to belong to someone else. She opened her phone and checked Daniel's location. Unavailable. It had been unavailable since noon, when he texted that the hotel Wi-Fi was terrible and he would be in meetings all day. Then she checked the front door camera. No alert. That was wrong. The camera notified her whenever a package, a dog walker, or a leaf with ambitions crossed the steps. If Daniel had entered through the front door, she would have known. Rachel opened the side gate camera. Offline. The garden camera. Offline. The hallway camera. Offline. One by one, the little gray icons appeared like closed eyes. The taxi's heater hummed. Rain tapped the roof. Rachel sat perfectly still while the truth formed with cruel patience. Someone had shut off the cameras. Someone inside her house knew where they were. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Just got to the hotel. Exhausted. Going straight to sleep. Love you." Rachel looked up at the dark bedroom window. The pear tart box bent slightly under her fingers. For a moment, she wanted to get out, unlock the door, run upstairs, and tear the truth into the open with her bare hands. She imagined the bedroom door flying back. Daniel's face. A woman's gasp. The sharp satisfaction of catching them before they could arrange themselves into innocence. Then she saw the hallway light flash on for half a second behind the frosted glass beside the front door. Whoever was inside had moved downstairs. Rachel leaned forward. "Drive around the block," she told the driver. He looked confused. "Around?" "Slowly." The taxi pulled away. Rachel kept her eyes on the house until rain swallowed it behind them. Her heart hammered so violently she felt each beat in her throat. But beneath the panic, something older and steadier opened. Her grandmother's voice. "Never walk into a room just because someone wants you emotional enough to be foolish." Rachel opened her contacts and called Margaret Sloan. Margaret answered on the second ring, as if women in expensive legal professions slept beside danger. "Rachel?" "Daniel is in my house." Margaret did not ask if Rachel was sure. That was why Rachel called her. "Where are you?" "Taxi. Outside. He said he was in Chicago. Cameras are offline." Silence, brief and sharp. "Do not enter alone." Rachel closed her eyes. "There is someone with him." "Likely?" The bedroom light went off. "Do not enter alone," Margaret repeated. "Is the house held solely in your name?" "Yes." "Do you have security service through the Monroe Trust?" "Yes." "Call them. Ask for a welfare and property check. Use those words. I am on my way." The taxi turned at the end of the block. Rachel saw the house again. This time, a woman stood just inside the front hall. Only for a second. She was backlit by the staircase lamp, one hand raised to her hair, wearing Rachel's pale blue robe. The robe Rachel had left hanging on the bathroom door. Then the light went out. Rachel whispered, "I saw her." Margaret's voice became ice. "Good. Now we make sure the house sees her too." Chapter 2. The woman in Rachel's robe was not a stranger. That almost made it worse. Her name was Vivian Hart, and for 6 months Daniel had described her as basically family. She was his childhood friend, his college roommate's sister, his emergency contact before marriage because, as he once put it, Vivian had known him before ambition made him complicated. Rachel had tried to like her. That was the embarrassing part. Vivian was warm in public, all soft sweaters and easy laughter. She remembered birthdays. She brought handmade candles to dinner. She called Rachel Rach too quickly and touched Daniel's arm too often. When Rachel noticed, Daniel said Vivian was affectionate with everyone. When Rachel objected, he said she was insecure. When Vivian wore Daniel's old university sweatshirt during a winter weekend at their house, Rachel said nothing because it felt too small to become a wife who complained about fabric. Now Vivian was inside Rachel's home wearing Rachel's robe while Daniel pretended to sleep in Chicago. The taxi circled the block a second time. Rachel called the Monroe security line. Her grandmother had insisted she keep the service after the inheritance, even though Daniel mocked it as old money paranoia. "Monroe Residential Security," a man answered. "This is Rachel Monroe. I need a welfare and property check at Maple Crescent. Interior cameras are offline. My husband is inside after claiming he is out of state. There may be an unauthorized guest." The man did not waste time. "Are you safe?" "In a taxi outside." "Stay there. A mobile unit is 4 minutes away. Do you authorize remote system restoration if possible?" "Yes." "Do you authorize entry if active tampering is detected?" Rachel looked at the house. "Yes." The word felt like turning a key. The driver had gone very quiet. "Do you want me to keep driving?" he asked. "Park 2 houses down." He did. Rachel paid him double and asked him to wait 10 more minutes. He nodded, eyes wide, perhaps realizing he had become a side character in a rich woman's domestic crime scene. At 9:51, 2 black SUVs turned onto the street without sirens. At 9:52, Rachel's phone lit with alerts. Front door camera online. Hallway camera online. Garden camera online. Side gate camera online. Then the system sent a saved clip. The side gate at 8:06 p.m. Daniel entering with Vivian. She wore a beige coat and carried a small overnight bag. Daniel unlocked the side door with his own key, then looked up at the camera and reached for the wall panel. The feed cut out 1 second later. Rachel watched the clip twice. The second time, her body went cold, not at Vivian's bag, but at Daniel's face. No panic. No guilt. Familiarity. The face of a man who had done this before. The security team knocked at the front door. Inside, nothing moved. Then Daniel appeared in the hallway camera feed, wearing his dress shirt half-buttoned and an expression that made Rachel's stomach turn. He looked annoyed before he looked afraid. That mattered. The lead guard spoke through the intercom. "Mr. Bennett, this is Monroe Residential Security. We are here for an authorized property check." Daniel opened the door just enough to be seen. "This is absurd. My wife is out of town." Rachel, watching from the taxi, almost smiled. He had lost track of which lie belonged where. The guard remained calm. "Mrs. Monroe authorized the check." Daniel's face changed. Not much. Enough. She is confused, he said. She has been under stress. There it was. The first counterattack. Rachel had expected denial. She had expected anger. She had not expected him to reach so quickly for her sanity. Yet maybe she should have. Men who hide in dark rooms often keep that weapon ready. The guard said, "Sir, we need to verify the camera outage and the presence of unauthorized guests." "There are no unauthorized guests." Behind him, Vivian's voice floated from the stairs. "Daniel?" The guard looked past him. The hallway camera saw it all. Vivian appeared barefoot on the landing, wrapped in Rachel's blue robe, hair damp as if she had showered in Rachel's bathroom. Rachel stopped feeling like she might cry. Something in her simply stood up inside itself. Daniel turned, furious. "Vivian, go upstairs." Too late. The camera had her. The guard's voice did not change. "Ma'am, please remain visible." Vivian froze. Rachel opened the taxi door and stepped into the rain. Her driver said, "Ma'am, are you sure?" Rachel looked toward the house, the tart box now forgotten on the seat. "No," she said, "but I am going anyway." She walked down the sidewalk under cold rain, her coat pulled tight, overnight bag over one shoulder. By the time she reached the front steps, Daniel had seen her. His face went through 3 lives in 3 seconds. Shock. Calculation. Concern. "Rachel," he said, opening the door wider. "Thank God. Something is wrong with the cameras. Security overreacted." Rachel looked past him at Vivian. The robe hung loose at her throat. Rachel said, "Take it off." Vivian's lips parted. Daniel stepped forward. "Do not speak to her like that." The sentence landed in the rain between them. He protected Vivian. In Rachel's house. In Rachel's robe. After lying about being in Chicago. The lead guard's eyes flicked to Rachel, waiting. Rachel felt the old instinct rise. Smooth it over. Do not make a scene. Do not become the dramatic wife. Do not let staff witness humiliation. Then she remembered the bedroom light going dark. "I said," Rachel repeated, "take off my robe." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Daniel snapped, "Rachel, stop." Rachel looked at him calmly. "No." The word surprised all 3 of them. Chapter 3. Rachel did not enter the house immediately. That was the detail she would later be grateful for. If she had stepped inside, Daniel could have swallowed the scene whole. He could have closed the door, lowered his voice, turned the security team into intruders, Vivian into a crying innocent, and Rachel into a jealous wife shaking in her own hallway. But Rachel stayed on the front step under the porch light, rain dripping from her hair, while the cameras recorded from 3 angles. She had learned something in the taxi. Truth needed witnesses. Daniel moved closer to the threshold. "You are soaking wet. Come inside." "No." "Rachel. Tell Vivian to change into her own clothes and leave my house." Vivian took a shaky step down. "Rachel, please, this is not what you think." Rachel looked at her. "Then say what it is." Vivian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Daniel answered for her. "She came because she was upset. I came back early to help her. I did not want to wake you because I thought you were at your mother's. You texted me you were at a hotel in Chicago. Because I knew you would overreact." There it was. A lie turned into her flaw. One of the security guards shifted, barely. Rachel noticed. Daniel noticed too, and softened his face immediately. "Honey, you have been under a lot of pressure. Your mother is ill. The foundation meetings are wearing you down. You misread things." Rachel felt anger spark, bright and useful. Her mother was not ill. Her mother was dead. Daniel had made the mistake because he was speaking from a prepared script about emotional instability and family stress. He had forgotten which woman he was married to and which lie he was telling. Rachel's voice went quiet. My mother died 6 years ago. Daniel froze. Vivian closed her eyes. The lead guard looked at Daniel with professional neutrality, but his jaw tightened. Rachel continued, You mean my grandmother's foundation meetings? Daniel swallowed. That is what I meant. No, you meant I was confused enough for that to work. Behind Daniel, Vivian began to cry. The tears might have moved Rachel a year ago. Tonight they only made the robe look more obscene. Rachel turned to the lead guard. Please escort Miss Hart to the guest bath to change into her own clothes. She is not to enter the bedroom again. One female officer if available. Rachel, Daniel said sharply, you do not give orders like this. The guard answered before she could. Mrs. Monroe is the property owner. The word owner changed the air. Vivian looked up. Daniel's face darkened. For years he had enjoyed the house without understanding it. Rachel's grandmother had left it to her through the Monroe Residential Trust, protected before marriage, and preserved by documents Daniel dismissed as family bureaucracy. He knew in theory that Rachel owned it. But theory was easy to ignore while sleeping in the primary bedroom and hosting his colleagues under the chandelier. Tonight, theory stood on the porch and gave instructions. Vivian disappeared with a female guard who had arrived in the second SUV. Daniel watched her go with fury. He tried to hide. Rachel saw that too. You are more worried about her embarrassment than mine. He turned back. I am worried about you destroying our marriage over a misunderstanding. You shut off the cameras. For privacy. You brought a woman into my bedroom. She was upset. She showered in my bathroom. Rachel, listen to yourself. I am. That stopped him for a second. The sound of another car pulled up behind the security SUVs. Margaret Sloane stepped out beneath a black umbrella. She was in her 60s, tall, silver-haired, and dressed in a dark coat that seemed designed to make bad husbands reconsider their choices. Margaret had been Rachel's family attorney since her grandmother's last illness. Daniel hated her because she remembered everything and smiled at nothing. Margaret walked up the path, looked at Rachel, then at Daniel. Good evening. Daniel laughed without humor. Of course you called her. Rachel said, Of course I did. Margaret closed her umbrella on the porch. Mr. Bennett, before anyone says another foolish thing, I should tell you the camera outage, side entrance footage, hallway footage, and current porch recording are being preserved. Daniel's face changed. Margaret looked past him into the house. Now, shall we discuss why your wife came home to find you in a house you do not own with a woman wearing clothing she did not bring? Chapter 4. Vivian Hart had been waiting for Rachel to become ugly. That was the role assigned to the wife in the story Daniel told her. Rachel was cold, privileged, controlling. Rachel did not understand affection because she had been raised by trustees and old money. Rachel cared more about foundations than marriage. Rachel would explode if she saw them together, proving Daniel right. On the guest bathroom floor, wearing her own dress again, while a female security officer waited outside the door, Vivian realized Rachel had not exploded. That was worse. The blue robe lay folded on the sink. Vivian stared at it. She had put it on without thinking, or rather without wanting to think. Daniel had told her Rachel would not be back until tomorrow. He had told her the house felt dead without warmth. He had told her the robe was just hanging there, and she looked cold. Vivian had known it was Rachel's. Of course she had known. Women know when they are wearing another woman's life. She had slipped into it anyway because it made her feel chosen in a way Daniel had never made official. The bedroom, the shower, the robe, the darkened light, small stolen proofs. Now the proofs had become evidence. Downstairs she heard Margaret Sloane's voice. Not loud, not emotional. That made it more frightening. Vivian dried her face with a towel that probably cost more than her monthly grocery bill and looked at herself in the mirror. Her mascara had smudged, her lips were pale. Without the robe, she looked less like a tragic lover and more like a woman caught where she had no right to be. She had known Daniel since they were teenagers. That was the weapon he used most skillfully. No one understands me like you do. Rachel only sees the version of me she wants. You knew me before the money, before the pressure, before I had to become someone else. Vivian had believed those sentences because they made her feel original, not mistress, not replacement, the true witness, the woman who held the earlier, purer version of him. But downstairs, Daniel was not defending her. He was defending his access. That difference finally reached her. The officer knocked gently. "Miss Hart, are you dressed?" "Yes." "Please come downstairs." Vivian lifted the robe, then set it back on the sink. She walked down the stairs barefoot because her heels were still in the bedroom and no one had allowed her to retrieve them. The hallway felt longer than before. At the bottom, Rachel stood with Margaret and 2 security officers. Daniel stood apart from them, his hair slightly damp, his mouth tight. He looked at Vivian not with concern, but warning. Vivian stopped. Margaret turned to her. "Miss Hart, you will be escorted out through the front door. If you have personal belongings in the primary bedroom, they will be inventoried and returned later." Vivian's face burned. "I just need my shoes." "They will be returned." Daniel stepped forward. "This is unnecessary." Margaret looked at him. "You have used that word repeatedly. It has not become more accurate." Rachel said nothing. That silence made Vivian look at her. Rachel's face was pale but composed. Her wet hair clung near her temples. Her eyes were not empty, they were worse, awake. Vivian wanted to apologize. Not from courage, from panic, from shame, from the awful desire to have Rachel say something that made Vivian feel less monstrous. Before she could speak, Daniel said, "Vivian, go home. Do not answer anyone's questions." There it was. Not "Are you all right?" Not "I am sorry." Do not answer. Vivian stared at him. Rachel saw it. Margaret saw it too. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Vivian." Vivian looked at Rachel's robe folded on the bathroom counter visible through the hall. Then she said quietly, "I turned off the bedroom lamp when the taxi passed." Daniel went still. Rachel's eyes sharpened. Vivian's voice shook, but she kept going. "Daniel saw the taxi slow down. He thought it might be you. He told me to shut off the light and stay away from the window." The hall became silent. Daniel's face hardened into something Vivian had never seen directed at her before. "Do not lie because you are scared." Vivian almost laughed. There it was again, the conversion. From beloved witness to unstable liar in under 1 minute. Margaret spoke. "Thank you, Miss Hart. We will need a formal statement." Vivian nodded once. Rachel finally spoke. "Return the robe before you leave." Vivian swallowed. "It is in the bathroom." "Good." That was all. No screaming, no slap, no dramatic curse. Somehow that felt worse. Chapter 5. Daniel left the house at 10:38 p.m. Not because he wanted to. Because Margaret gave him 3 options, each worse for his pride than the last. He could leave voluntarily for the night while counsel arranged temporary terms. He could refuse and force the security team to document his continued presence after the property owner's request. Or he could wait for police involvement and turn a humiliating private record into a public incident. Daniel chose the first option while pretending it was his idea. "I will give Rachel space," he said. Rachel stood in the foyer with her arms folded. How generous. His eyes flashed. Margaret placed herself 1 step closer to Rachel. Daniel noticed and swallowed whatever he had been about to say. He went upstairs under supervision and packed an overnight bag. When he came down, he wore a coat over the shirt Rachel had bought him for his last birthday. The sight of it hurt in a stupid, ordinary way. Betrayal did not erase birthdays. That was one of its cruelties. At the door, Daniel paused. "Rachel, you are making a mistake." She looked at him. "No, I made one 6 years ago. Tonight I noticed." His face tightened. Then he left. The door closed. Rachel expected to collapse. Instead, she stood very still while the house rearranged itself around his absence. The security team checked the panels. Margaret spoke with the lead guard. Vivian's shoes and bag were sealed in an evidence pouch because Margaret said the phrase, chain of custody, with a straight face, while Rachel stared at a pair of nude heels like they belonged to a crime committed by bad taste. Finally, the house emptied. Only Rachel and Margaret remained. Rain softened outside. Rachel walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the sofa. The pear tart box was still in the taxi, she realized. Or perhaps the driver had kept it. Good. Let someone innocent enjoy something sweet. Margaret sat across from her. Do you want tea? Rachel looked at her. You know where the tea is? Your grandmother kept tea in the same cabinet for 30 years. Unless you committed a crime against order, yes. Rachel gave a small laugh. Then she began to cry. It came without elegance. One moment she was laughing. The next she was bent forward with both hands over her face, the sounds low and broken. Margaret did not rush to comfort her. She went to the kitchen, made tea, and returned with tissues and a blanket. That was exactly right. When the first wave passed, Rachel wiped her face. I saw the light go out. I know. Such a small thing. Small things are often doors. Rachel breathed shakily. I almost went in. But you did not. I wanted to scream. Also understandable. Would it have ruined everything? Margaret tilted her head. Not everything, but it would have given Daniel a scene to point at instead of his conduct. Rachel closed her eyes. There it was, the lesson she hated needing. Women were expected to be wounded politely enough for the wound to be believed. What happens tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow, we preserve evidence, send formal notice, change access permissions, review financial records, and prepare for Daniel to claim you are unstable, vindictive, or manipulated by me. He already started. Yes, poorly. Rachel almost smiled. Margaret continued, we also decide what you want. Rachel looked toward the staircase. The bedroom waited above them. Her bedroom, her grandmother's house, her marriage's crime scene. I want him out. Temporarily or permanently? Rachel stared at the dark window beyond the living room. For a moment, she saw the bedroom light go out again. Permanently, she said. The word did not feel victorious. It felt like cutting a rope around her ribs. Chapter 6. Daniel struck first at breakfast. Not in person. By message. Rachel woke after 3 hours of broken sleep in the guest room because she could not bring herself to enter the primary bedroom. Her eyes were swollen. Her throat hurt. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner because Mrs. Alvarez had arrived before dawn and cleaned the guest bathroom as if scrubbing could rebuke adultery. Daniel's message arrived at 7:12. I am worried about you. Last night was not normal. You brought armed security into our home over a misunderstanding. Please talk to someone before Margaret escalates this. Rachel read it twice. Our home. Misunderstanding. Talk to someone. Margaret had predicted the shape, but seeing it still made Rachel's hands cold. Another message followed. Vivian is traumatized. She came to me because she was in crisis. You humiliated her. Rachel looked toward the ceiling. Vivian was traumatized. Not Rachel, standing in rain outside her own house. Not Rachel, watching another woman descend her stairs in her robe. Vivian. Then came the third message. I am willing to forgive last night if you agree not to involve lawyers. Rachel laughed. It came out quiet and humorless, but it felt good. She forwarded the messages to Margaret. Margaret replied, predictable. Do not answer. At 9, Daniel's mother called. Rachel considered ignoring it, Then she answered, because avoidance would only postpone the next bruise. Rachel, Patricia Bennett said, voice trembling with outrage. What happened last night? You should ask Daniel. I did. He is devastated. Rachel closed her eyes. Of course. He said you came home unexpectedly and misunderstood Vivian's presence. She has been part of his life since childhood. You know that. She was wearing my robe in my house. A pause. Daniel says she spilled wine. Rachel looked at the coffee mug in front of her. At 9:40 p.m. in my bedroom while he was supposedly in Chicago? Patricia inhaled sharply. Not because she believed Rachel. Because the lie had details she had not been given. Marriage is not easy, Patricia said, softer now. You are both under pressure. The Monroe Foundation, the house, Daniel's expansion work. Sometimes men make foolish choices when they feel excluded. There it was. The family version. If Rachel had given Daniel more access, fewer boundaries, less reason to feel small, perhaps he would not have brought Vivian into her bedroom. Rachel's voice became very calm. Patricia, Daniel is not excluded from my life because he lacked access. He is excluded from my house because he lied, disabled cameras, and brought another woman into my bedroom. Do you hear yourself? Cameras, security, lawyers. This is not how normal couples handle hurt. No, Rachel said. It is how property owners handle trespass and evidence. Patricia went silent. Rachel was surprised by her own words. Margaret would be proud. Possibly insufferable. You sound cold, Patricia whispered. Rachel looked out at the wet garden. I sound awake. She ended the call. Her hands shook afterward. Being clear did not mean being untouched. That was important to remember. At 10, Margaret arrived with a folder and a warning. Daniel is moving quickly. Rachel stood in the kitchen. How? He emailed 2 members of the Crescent Arts Board this morning. He says you are having a severe emotional reaction and he worries the foundation's current decision-making may be affected. For 1 second, Rachel did not understand. Then she did. Daniel was not only defending the affair, he was attacking her position. The Crescent Arts Board controlled a major cultural redevelopment grant Daniel's design consultancy had been pursuing for a year. Rachel sat on the board because her grandmother had endowed the original Arts Trust. Daniel had once called the board old-fashioned and useless. Then he learned their redevelopment contract could make his firm visible nationally. Now he was trying to make Rachel look unstable before she could close the door. Pain sharpened into focus. He is trying to get ahead of me. Yes. Can he? Margaret placed the folder on the counter. Not if we let the truth arrive first. Chapter 7. The Crescent Arts Board meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Daniel had expected to attend as a finalist. Rachel had expected to support his firm's presentation, though she had recused herself from the vote. That had been her compromise. She would not use her influence to help him, but she would not stand in his way if the work deserved consideration. That was before the bedroom light. Now the board meeting became a stage Daniel wanted to reach before she did. By Wednesday afternoon, he had sent 3 emails, one to the board chair expressing concern for Rachel's stress, one to a trustee implying Margaret Sloan was controlling Rachel's decisions, one to a donor suggesting that marital conflict should not derail a valuable public arts project. He wrote beautifully. That was one of the reasons Rachel had once loved him. Daniel could make self-interest sound like civic duty. He could wrap ambition in elegant language and hand it to a room like a gift. Rachel read the emails in Margaret's office. He makes me sound unstable without saying unstable. That is intentional. He makes himself sound noble. Also intentional. Rachel pushed the pages away. I hate that he is good at this. Margaret sat back. Charm is often skill without conscience. Rachel looked at her. Do you practice these sentences? Constantly. Despite everything, Rachel smiled. Then Margaret opened a second folder. There is more. Of course there was. Daniel's firm had listed the Monroe townhouse as a proposed donor salon venue in its Crescent pitch package. Rachel stared at the page. Renderings, event language, private access, historic residence partnership, her grandmother's house transformed into a line item without permission. He used the house. He implied access. He never asked me. No. Rachel thought of Daniel walking clients through the living room 2 months earlier, saying the house had always inspired him. She thought it was flattery. It had been marketing. The hurt was different from Vivian. Less intimate. More insulting. Daniel had not only used her bed. He had used her home as business collateral. What do? We notify the board that the property is not available for any project partnership, that Daniel's representation was unauthorized, and that his recent communications about your emotional state were sent after documented misconduct at the property. Rachel was quiet. Margaret studied her. You can still choose to say less. No. Good. But I want to be careful. Also good. Rachel looked at the pitch package again. A glossy photograph of her dining room appeared under the phrase, intimate patron experience. Her grandmother would have hated that. The thought steadied her. We do not make it about the affair, Rachel said. We make it about unauthorized use of the house, false access claims, and his attempt to undermine a board member after being caught. Margaret's eyes warmed. Very good. Do not look proud. It is unnerving. I am proud. Still unnerving. The notice went out that evening. At 9:03 p.m., Daniel called Rachel. She did not answer. At 9:05, he sent a message. You are going to destroy years of my work because you are jealous of Vivian? Rachel read it once. The old Rachel might have answered with paragraphs. She might have explained that jealousy was not the issue, that the house mattered, that lying mattered, that Vivian in her robe was not a misunderstanding. The new Rachel forwarded it to Margaret. Then she went upstairs. For the first time since the night of the light, she entered the primary bedroom. The room smelled clean. Mrs. Alvarez had changed the sheets, aired the curtains, and placed lavender on the dresser like a small act of war. Rachel stood near the bed. She did not feel brave. She felt nauseous. But she stayed. This was her room before Daniel darkened it. It could be hers after. Chapter 8. Vivian's statement arrived the morning of the board meeting. It came through her own attorney, which Margaret called a sign that terror has matured into usefulness. Rachel read it at the kitchen table with coffee she had forgotten to drink. Vivian admitted Daniel had invited her to the house while Rachel was away. She admitted she knew Rachel did not know. She admitted she wore Rachel's robe. She admitted Daniel told her to turn off the bedroom light when a taxi slowed outside. She admitted Daniel told her not to answer questions after security arrived. Then came the part Rachel had not expected. Vivian also admitted Daniel had discussed using the Monroe townhouse as a donor salon venue without Rachel's written approval. He had told Vivian that Rachel would object at first, but, once the board is excited, she will not want to embarrass me. Rachel set the paper down. There it was. The pattern in one sentence. Create momentum. Use her manners against her. Make refusal look like cruelty. Vivian had attached messages. One from Daniel read, Rachel hates being the bad guy. Once the room expects her to say yes, she will cave. Rachel stared at the word cave. She heard him saying she was too sensitive, too rigid, too attached to old boundaries. She remembered all the times she had agreed to something because disagreeing in public felt like making a scene. He had noticed. He had used it. Margaret arrived at 10. Rachel handed her the page. Margaret read it and said a word Rachel had never heard her say before. It was not elegant. Rachel raised her eyebrows. Margaret folded the statement calmly. Your grandmother would agree. That helped more than it should have. The board meeting began at noon in the Crescent Arts Foundation's old library. Tall windows, dark shelves, portraits of founders who looked judgmental even in oil paint. Rachel sat at the long table with Margaret beside her as counsel. Daniel arrived 10 minutes early. He wore a charcoal suit and the expression of a man prepared to be misunderstood handsomely. When he saw Rachel, his face softened into concern. Rachel. She looked at him. Daniel. He glanced at Margaret. Can we speak privately? No. A few board members had already arrived. They heard. Daniel's smile strained. This is exactly what I mean. You are letting her turn this into a legal war. Margaret opened her folder without looking up. Mr. Bennett, I am not that magical. The board chair, Helena Price, entered before Daniel could answer. She was 80, elegant, and difficult to impress. She had known Rachel's grandmother and considered most men under 60 undercooked. Let us begin, Helena said. Daniel stood for his presentation. He was good. Rachel hated that. He spoke about art access, neighborhood restoration, historic spaces, donor engagement, and his firm's deep respect for legacy architecture. The renderings were beautiful. His voice was warm. Several board members leaned in despite themselves. Then he reached the slide with Rachel's dining room. Helena lifted one hand. Stop. Daniel paused. Of course. Helena looked at Rachel. Did you authorize use of your residence in this proposal? Rachel's heart beat once, hard. Every old instinct screamed at her to soften the room. She did not. No. The word was simple. It changed everything. Helena looked back at Daniel. Mr. Bennett? Daniel adjusted his cuff. My wife and I had discussed possible future involvement informally. Rachel said, No, we did not. The room went still. Daniel's face tightened. Margaret placed copies of the notice and Vivian's statement in front of the chair. No drama. Paper. Helena read silently. The longer she read, the colder the room became. Daniel tried once. Vivian is under pressure and not reliable. Rachel looked at him. She became unreliable very quickly after wearing my robe. One board member choked on water. Helena did not smile, but Rachel thought she wanted to. The chair closed the folder. Mr. Bennett, Crescent cannot consider a proposal built on unauthorized access to a trustee's private residence. Daniel's face went pale. Helena, the work should stand apart from personal conflict. It might have, Helena said, if you had not put her dining room in the deck. That was the moment Daniel knew he had lost the room. Chapter 9. Daniel did not leave quietly. Men like Daniel rarely did when charm failed in public. He gathered his materials slowly, giving himself time to transform defeat into injury. Rachel watched him from across the library table. His hands were steady, but a pulse beat visibly at his temple. I hope everyone understands what is happening here, he said. Helena Price looked bored. I understand quite well. Daniel ignored her and turned to the board. A private marital issue is being weaponized against years of professional work. Rachel felt the room waiting for her. This was the strike she had expected. The jealous wife, the emotional woman, the old story in a better suit. She stood. Not quickly, not dramatically. Daniel, she said, if this were only a private marital issue, your proposal would not contain unauthorized images of my home. He looked at her with something close to hate. You are enjoying this. The accusation would have hurt once. Today it simply missed. No, Rachel said. I enjoyed thinking I had a husband who respected closed doors. That was the part I liked. Silence. Margaret's pen stopped. Even Helena looked at Rachel with a flash of approval. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. He left. The door shut behind him with a heavy sound. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Helena said, "Well, let us remove that proposal from the agenda." And the meeting continued. That was the victory Rachel had not expected. Not Daniel's humiliation. The continuation. His exit did not empty the room. His anger did not become the center. The work moved on without him. After the meeting, Helena asked Rachel to stay. Margaret waited near the door. Helena closed the old leather folder in front of her. "Your grandmother once removed a mayor from this library." Rachel blinked. "What?" "He tried to bully her into approving a sculpture garden contract for his cousin. She let him speak for 20 minutes, then asked whether he preferred to walk out or be voted out." Despite herself, Rachel smiled. "She never told me that. She preferred her legends edited." Rachel looked toward the portrait wall. Her grandmother's portrait was not there. She had refused one, saying no wall needed another old woman watching people lie. Rachel missed her so suddenly it hurt. Helena's voice softened. "You did well today." "I feel sick." Doing well often feels like that at first. Margaret from the doorway said, "I keep telling people." Helena looked at her. "No one asked you, Margaret." "They rarely do. I persist." Rachel laughed. It surprised her. The laugh was small but real. Chapter 10. Daniel filed for divorce before Rachel did. It was his attempt to reclaim the first move. The petition arrived 4 days after the board meeting. It described irreconcilable differences, emotional volatility, and an unsafe escalation involving private security. It claimed Daniel had been forced from the marital residence without reasonable access to personal property. It suggested Rachel's family counsel had manipulated her during a vulnerable period. Rachel read it in Margaret's office. "He makes it sound like I staged a coup because he was comforting a childhood friend." Margaret took the petition. "Yes." "Can he make that work?" "Not well. But he can make it ugly." "Yes." Rachel leaned back. There was the wave. The first night had been shock. The board meeting had been public correction. Now came the mud. Daniel could not keep the house or the contract, so he would try for the story. Margaret slid another folder over. "We file response and counter petition. We include property documentation, camera footage summary, Vivian's statement, unauthorized proposal materials, and the messages to board members." "Do we include everything?" "Enough." Rachel liked that. Enough was becoming a survival word. That evening, Daniel texted her from an unknown number. "You are letting Margaret turn you into someone I do not recognize." Rachel stared at it. Once, that sentence would have sent her spiraling. She would have wondered whether she had become cold, whether strength was making her unlovable, whether refusing to be humiliated meant losing the gentle parts of herself. Now she saw the trick. He did not recognize a version of her he could not manage. That was not a tragedy. She blocked the number. The next week was harder. Daniel's mother called again. Mutual friends sent careful messages. One of Daniel's colleagues suggested over email that Rachel should separate personal pain from professional legacy. Vivian's attorney sent additional messages that made Daniel look worse, and Vivian slightly less fictional, which irritated Rachel because she was not ready to appreciate anything about Vivian. Then the newspapers found a whisper. Not a scandal, not front page. A small arts column mentioned that Bennett Studios' Crescent proposal had been withdrawn after a private residence access dispute. No names beyond Daniel's firm. Daniel blamed Rachel. He sent a message through counsel accusing her of leaking. She had not. Helena probably had. Margaret said, "Do not ask questions when elderly women do useful things quietly." Rachel tried not to laugh. Still, the pressure wore on her. For 3 nights, she slept in the guest room again. The primary bedroom looked peaceful after cleaning, but peace did not mean ready. She had learned not to force herself into rooms before her body believed her. On the 4th night, she carried a blanket upstairs and sat on the bedroom floor. No phone. No wine. No dramatic music. Just her and the room. She looked at the lamp Daniel had turned off from inside. Then she stood and turned it on. Warm light filled the room. Rachel did not cry. That came later, unexpectedly, while brushing her teeth. Healing had terrible timing. Chapter 11. Vivian asked to meet 2 weeks after the divorce filing. Rachel refused. Vivian asked again through counsel, this time offering to return items left at the house and provide a sworn statement about Daniel's proposal materials. Margaret advised a controlled meeting. Useful does not mean forgiven, she said. Good, Rachel replied, because I am nowhere near forgiven. They met in a conference room at Margaret's office, neutral table, glass walls, no soft furniture where feelings could pretend to be the point. Vivian arrived in a gray coat, hair tied back, face bare of the soft glow she once wore in Rachel's living room. She carried a paper bag and a folder. Rachel sat with Margaret beside her. Vivian did not try to hug her. Good. She placed the bag on the table. Your robe is inside, cleaned. Rachel did not touch it. You should have left it in the bathroom. Vivian closed her eyes briefly. I know. Why did you wear it? Margaret glanced at Rachel. It was not a legal question. It was the question. Vivian's fingers tightened around the folder. Because I wanted to feel like I belonged. The answer was so small and ugly that Rachel almost looked away. Vivian continued, voice thin. Daniel always made it sound like you lived in a museum, and he was lonely there. He said the house never felt like a home. He said you cared more about what your grandmother wanted than what he needed. Rachel's chest tightened. So you put on my robe? Yes. And that made it home? Vivian shook her head. Tears gathered, but she did not let them become a performance. No, it made me a thief. The room went still. Rachel had expected excuses. This was harder to hate. Vivian opened the folder. Daniel told me the Crescent proposal was already understood between you. When I asked why the house was in the deck, he said you hated saying yes until people expected you to. I thought it was a joke. It was not. I know that now. Vivian slid printed messages across the table. He also asked me to say I came to the house because I was afraid of my ex, that you overreacted, that the robe was because my clothes were wet. Rachel looked at the messages. Daniel had written, Rachel will not want this uglier. If you stay calm, she will fold. There was that word again. Fold, cave, overreact. His vocabulary of her obedience. Rachel pushed the messages back toward Margaret. Vivian whispered, I am sorry. Rachel looked at her. For what? Vivian swallowed. For wanting your place enough to pretend it was empty. Rachel felt the sentence land. It did not heal. But it named something true. You cannot have my forgiveness right now, Rachel said. I know. You can give the statement. I will. And Vivian? Vivian looked up. Do not let a man make you feel chosen by helping him erase another woman. Vivian's face crumpled. Rachel stood. The meeting was over. In the elevator, Margaret said, that last line was good. Rachel leaned against the wall. I hated that it came from somewhere sincere. Sincerity is inconvenient. Very. Chapter 12. The divorce conference was not satisfying. Rachel had expected, perhaps foolishly, that strong evidence would make Daniel smaller immediately. Instead, it made him more careful. He arrived with a new attorney, a gray suit, and a face arranged into reasonable sorrow. The conference room smelled like coffee and paper. Margaret sat beside Rachel. Daniel sat across the table. His attorney began with a tone of cooperation that lasted exactly 9 minutes. Daniel wanted temporary access to the house for inventory. Denied unless supervised. He wanted certain furniture considered marital property. Discussable. He wanted his business losses excluded from any settlement discussion. Margaret smiled. That was not a good sign for him. He wanted the court to ignore the Crescent issue as unrelated professional damage. Rachel finally spoke. You put my dining room in your proposal. Daniel looked at her as if wounded by her interruption. Rachel, I was proud of our home. No, you were marketing it. His expression shifted. One small crack. The attorneys continued. Bank accounts, investments, prenuptial terms, trust exclusions, personal property. The language was dry, but every item had a memory attached. The dining table they chose after their first anniversary, the print from a trip to Lisbon, the lamp she had turned back on. Divorce turned objects into categories. That felt indecent and necessary. Halfway through, Daniel asked for a private conversation. Margaret said no. Rachel said, 5 minutes, with Margaret present. Daniel looked irritated but agreed. His attorney stepped out. Margaret stayed. Daniel leaned forward. Is this really what you want? Rachel looked at him. He lowered his voice. I made a terrible mistake. I should not have brought Vivian there. But you are letting one night erase 6 years. One night. Rachel felt the phrase try to reduce everything. It was not one night. It was. No. One night was when I saw it. The rest was what made you think you could do it. Daniel flinched. Margaret was very still beside her. Rachel continued. You used my manners, my house, my board position, my fear of being dramatic. You brought Vivian into my bedroom and then told your mother I was unstable. You turned off the cameras because you knew it was wrong. His face hardened. You sound rehearsed. I sound finished. For the first time, Daniel looked away. The conference did not end with a dramatic surrender. Real life rarely gave that courtesy, but it ended with Daniel conceding supervised access for property inventory, removing claims to the house, and agreeing that Crescent-related business losses would not be framed as Rachel's liability. Small wins. Concrete wins. Rachel left exhausted. Outside, Margaret asked, How are you? Rachel thought about it. Not triumphant. Good. Triumphant people make mistakes. What do careful people make? Tea, usually. So they did. Chapter 13. For 3 days, Daniel went quiet. Rachel knew better than to mistake quiet for regret. Quiet was often where people built their next lie. On the 4th morning, her phone began shaking on the kitchen counter before the coffee finished brewing. First one message, then 5. Then a call from Helena. Then another from Margaret. Rachel stood barefoot in the pale kitchen light and looked at the screen. Someone had posted a video. The clip was only 28 seconds long. It showed Rachel standing on her own front steps the night of the incident, rain silvering her coat, her face white with controlled shock. Daniel stood in the doorway. Vivian was hidden behind him. The sound was poor, but Daniel's voice came through clearly. Rachel, you need to calm down. Then Rachel's voice, cut from a later moment, said, Leave my house. The caption read, Wealthy arts patron throws husband out after private marital dispute. Sources say divorce pressure is affecting Crescent funding. Rachel did not move. Steam rose from the coffee machine behind her. The kitchen smelled warm and ordinary. Her body felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. The clip had been edited so carefully that she almost admired the cruelty of it. It removed the woman in Rachel's robe. It removed the disabled cameras. It removed Daniel's false business trip. It removed the part where Daniel told a lie about Rachel's dead mother. It left only a wet, pale wife ordering a husband to leave, while the husband sounded patient and wounded. Margaret called again. Rachel answered. Do not respond publicly, Margaret said before Rachel could speak. I know. Daniel's side is trying to make you look volatile before the next filing. I know that too. Margaret paused. Your voice sounds too calm. It is not calm, it is waiting. Good, waiting is billable but useful. Rachel took the coffee mug from under the machine. Her hand was steady because she forced it to be. Inside, anger pressed hard against her ribs. She had expected Daniel to defend himself. She had not expected him to feed a version of her pain to strangers and call it context. Helena called next. "I assume you have seen the little masterpiece of dishonesty," Helena said. "Yes." "Do you want the board to issue anything?" "Not yet." Wise. Annoying, but wise. Rachel looked toward the hallway, toward the stairs, toward the bedroom where a light had once gone dark. "Daniel wants me to look like I am fighting in public," she said. "Then do not give him the picture." "I will not." That was easy to say. It was harder when comments began appearing under old photos from Crescent events. People who had never met Rachel called her spoiled, bitter, controlling. They said rich wives always made private betrayal into public punishment. They said Daniel seemed reasonable. They said no one knew what happened inside a marriage. Rachel read 12 comments before closing the app. 12 was enough. She set the phone face down and breathed through the ache in her throat. She had survived the bedroom. She could survive strangers. But the unfairness still burned. By noon, the clip had reached 2 small gossip accounts and 1 arts newsletter that should have known better. A photograph of Rachel at a gala sat beside a headline about emotional instability among foundation leaders. It did not name her directly in the first paragraph, which somehow made it worse. The article pretended to be concerned while spreading the wound with clean fingers. Margaret arrived after lunch with a laptop, a folder, and the expression of a woman who had already decided not to enjoy herself too much. "We are going to preserve every repost," she said. Rachel sat across from her at the dining table. "Then what?" "Then we wait until Daniel's attorney denies involvement in writing." "Why?" Margaret opened the laptop. "Because lies are more useful when people sign their names near them." The first denial came at 3:40. Daniel's attorney wrote that his client had no knowledge of any media distribution and wished only for privacy during a difficult personal period. Rachel read the sentence twice. Privacy. Daniel had brought Vivian into her bedroom, turned off her cameras, used her house in a proposal, accused her of instability, and now he wanted privacy because his edited lie had reached strangers. For a moment, Rachel laughed. The sound surprised both women. Margaret looked up. "That is either a healthy response or a sign I should remove sharp objects." "I am fine." "People who are fine do not usually sound like that." "Then I am not fine, but I am accurate." Margaret's mouth almost moved into a smile. By evening, Rachel received a call from Patricia Bennett. She considered letting it ring. Then she answered and put it on speaker while Margaret listened. Patricia's voice arrived sweet and trembling. "Rachel, darling, this has gone too far." Rachel stared at the vase in the center of the table. It held white tulips that had begun to bend. "Which part?" "The public spectacle." "I did not post the video." "No, but people know you forced Daniel out. A wife should never put private problems on display." Rachel's eyes moved to Margaret. Margaret mouthed, "Keep her talking." Rachel said, "I agree. Private problems should not be edited into public clips." Patricia sighed as if disappointed by a child. "You always were clever with words. That is part of the problem. You make people afraid to be honest with you." Rachel felt the old pressure behind her breastbone. Patricia's gift had always been making accusations sound like concern. What honesty did I make Daniel afraid to share? That he was lonely. The word sat between them like something polished and false. Lonely. As if loneliness opened locked doors. As if loneliness wore another woman's robe. As if loneliness drafted proposals with stolen rooms inside them. Rachel said, "Your son told me he was in Chicago." Patricia's voice cooled by half a degree. Men sometimes avoid confrontation when their wives overreact. Margaret wrote something on her legal pad and turned it toward Rachel. Ask about clip. Rachel obeyed. Did Daniel send you the video before it went online? Silence. Not long. Enough. Rachel, I will not be interrogated. That is an answer. It is not. It is. Patricia ended the call. Margaret saved the recording with obvious satisfaction. Not proof she posted it, Rachel said. No, but proof they are rehearsing from the same script. The next morning brought the second blow. A delivery truck arrived with 3 men and a printed work order to remove disputed marital furnishings from the townhouse. They carried padded blankets, inventory tags, and the casual confidence of people who had been told the owner would be difficult. Mrs. Alvarez saw them from the front window and called Rachel before they reached the steps. Rachel came downstairs in a black sweater and calm anger. The lead mover held out the work order. Mrs. Bennett, we were instructed to collect items listed for temporary storage. By whom? Mr. Bennett's office. Rachel took the paper without touching his hand. The list included the dining table, 2 hallway paintings, the antique mirror in the entry, the pair of library chairs, and the small bronze lamp from her grandmother's study. None belonged to Daniel. The work order was signed by his assistant, not his attorney. That mattered. Rachel stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Her posture stayed straight, but her fingers pressed so hard into the paper that it creased. You will not enter this house. The lead mover shifted his weight. Ma'am, we have authorization. You have a piece of paper from someone who does not own the property. Mr. Bennett said this was marital inventory. Mr. Bennett also said he was in Chicago. The man's expression changed just enough to show he had seen the clip. Rachel hated that too. Not him. The fact that Daniel had turned her home into a place where strangers arrived already carrying a story about her. She called Margaret. Then she called security. Then, because she was done being made small on her own doorstep, she asked Mrs. Alvarez to come outside as a witness. Within 20 minutes, a supervisor from Monroe Residential Security arrived. Within 30, Margaret's associate came with certified copies of ownership records and the temporary access order from the divorce conference. The movers left without taking a spoon. But Daniel had achieved one thing. He had made Rachel stand on the steps again while strangers watched. This time, however, Rachel did not tremble. The lead mover apologized before leaving. He had the tired face of a man who wanted no part in rich people's wars. We were told you agreed, he said. I did not. I am sorry. Then write that in your completion note. He nodded. Rachel watched the truck pull away. Margaret's associate, a young man named Theo, looked impressed despite trying not to. Mrs. Bennett, he said, that was clean. Rachel folded the work order. Clean would have been not having to do it. Theo wisely said nothing. That afternoon, Margaret filed an emergency notice attaching the work order, the access order, and the mover's written statement that Daniel's office had represented consent. The language was dry. The effect was not. Daniel had tried to enter the house through logistics after losing the right to enter through marriage. The court did not like that. Neither did the board. Helena called at 6. I received a very interesting inquiry from one of Daniel's delayed clients, she said. Rachel closed her eyes. What now? Apparently, he has been telling people the Crescent problem is a personal misunderstanding and that you are using old family influence to punish him. That is not surprising. No, the surprising part is that he attached the edited clip to an email. Rachel sat down slowly. He sent it himself? Not to the public, perhaps, but to at least one person who forwarded it to me because she dislikes stupidity and has a subscription to good shoes. Rachel pressed 2 fingers to her temple. Daniel had denied involvement in distribution. Then used the clip as a business defense. There it was. The first solid crack. Margaret arrived again that night. She moved through the house like someone who had stopped pretending this case could stay civilized. They reviewed the forwarded email in the library. Daniel's message was polished, wounded, and fatally useful. He wrote that Rachel's emotional reaction to a private marital argument had unfairly damaged his public proposal. He attached the 28-second clip as context. He described himself as committed to discretion. Discretion with an attachment. Rachel stared at those words until the anger inside her became almost quiet. "He thinks everyone is less careful than he is," she said. Margaret saved the email. "That is a common and expensive mistake." Chapter 14. Daniel's counterattack did not end with the clip. It changed shape. The next week, Rachel received a formal notice from his attorney requesting an independent psychological evaluation before settlement discussions continued. The letter cited recent public behavior, erratic hostility, and concern for safe access to shared property. Rachel read it in Margaret's office while rain tapped against the windows. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she placed the paper on the desk with 2 fingers, as if it were dirty. "He wants the court to believe I am unstable because I objected to strangers taking my grandmother's furniture." Margaret removed her glasses. "Yes. And because he posted a video that makes me look unstable. Shared, distributed, attached, encouraged. We will choose the verb once we finish hurting him with it." Rachel looked toward the window. The city beyond the glass was gray and blurred. Her reflection looked composed. Only she knew how much effort composed could take. "This is what I was afraid of," she said. Margaret's face softened. "Not much. Enough. Being called crazy? Being forced to prove I am not. That was the oldest trap. If she cried, she was unstable. If she stayed calm, she was cold. If she defended herself, she was vindictive. If she stayed silent, the lie hardened. Daniel had not invented the trap. He had only learned to use it against the woman who knew exactly how much a reputation could cost. Margaret leaned back. "Then we do not prove your sanity, we prove his pattern." Rachel turned back. "How?" "We do not answer the insult, we answer the timeline." The timeline became their weapon. Not emotional arguments. Not speeches. Dates, times, messages, access logs, camera outages, proposal drafts, Vivian's statement, the mover's note, Daniel's email with the clip attached, Patricia's recorded call, the hotel reservation in Chicago that had been made and never used. Each piece on its own could be explained away by someone charming. Together, they formed a corridor with no exit. Margaret arranged everything into a binder called Sequence of Events. Rachel hated the title for being so plain, then she began to love it. Plainness was powerful. Lies liked atmosphere. Truth liked order. Still, there was one place the timeline could fail. The original clip. They needed to know who had filmed it from across the street and how it reached Daniel. The angle suggested the townhouse opposite Rachel's, a narrow brick building owned by an elderly widower named Mr. Calder. Rachel knew him only in passing. He fed the street plants, wore old cardigans, and complained that delivery drivers treated the block like a loading dock. Rachel did not want to involve him. Margaret said that sentiment was charming and irrelevant. So Rachel crossed the street on a cold afternoon with Theo beside her and a box of lemon biscuits in her hands. She felt ridiculous bringing biscuits to a man whose security camera might decide the direction of her divorce, but Mrs. Alvarez insisted decent people did not arrive empty-handed. Mr. Calder opened the door with suspicion already waiting on his face. "If this is about the parking permit, I told the council I was not moving my planter." Rachel blinked. Theo coughed into his hand. "It is not about the planter," Rachel said. Mr. Calder looked at the biscuits. Suspicion softened by 1 inch. Inside, his front parlor smelled like dust, tea, and old books. A chessboard sat unfinished near the window. Through that window, Rachel could see her own front steps. The view made her stomach tighten. She explained briefly. Not the affair in detail, not the robe, only that a video had been taken from a nearby angle, edited, and distributed in a way that affected legal proceedings. Mr. Calder's eyebrows drew together. I did not post anything. I believe you. My grandson handles the cameras. I hardly know how to make the television stop shouting at me. Theo asked carefully if they could see the camera system. Mr. Calder led them to a small monitor near the kitchen, the footage saved for 30 days. Theo found the night in question. Rachel stood behind him with her arms folded tightly. The screen showed the street from above. Her taxi arrived. The bedroom light went dark. Rachel remained in the taxi for a moment, head tilted upward. Then she got out. The clip continued beyond the edited version. It showed Daniel opening the door. It showed Vivian's pale sleeve behind him. It showed Margaret arriving. It showed security entering. It showed Daniel leaving alone with a suitcase while Rachel stayed on the steps. Most importantly, it showed a young man on the sidewalk across from Mr. Calder's house, holding up a phone and filming Rachel from behind a parked car. Theo paused the footage. Rachel leaned closer. She knew that profile. Not well. Enough. Daniel's assistant, Evan Reed. The same assistant who signed the furniture work order. Mr. Calder squinted at the monitor. That fellow came by the next morning. Rachel's skin prickled. Who? The one on the screen. Asked if my camera caught anything. Said he worked for your husband and needed it for insurance. I told him my grandson would have to export it. He seemed disappointed. Theo exchanged a look with Rachel. Did you give him anything? No, he gave me a card, though. Mr. Calder shuffled to a drawer and returned with a business card bearing Daniel's firm logo. I kept it because he had the manners of a wet umbrella. Rachel accepted the card carefully. It carried Evan's name and Daniel's office number. For the first time that day, she felt something close to satisfaction. Not joy. Satisfaction was less foolish. Evan had filmed her from the street. Evan had signed the work order. Evan had visited Mr. Calder for footage. Daniel could pretend ignorance once. Twice began to look like a system. Theo obtained a copy of Mr. Calder's full security footage with written permission. Mr. Calder accepted the biscuits and, after watching Theo label the file, muttered, "Your husband seems slippery." Rachel looked at the image frozen on the monitor, her own figure standing in the rain. He counted on polished floors, she said. Mr. Calder frowned. She almost smiled. Slippery people often do. On the walk back across the street, wind cut through Rachel's coat. Theo carried the drive in an evidence sleeve as if it were glass. This helps a lot, he said. Rachel looked up at her bedroom window. This time the curtain was open. Good, she said. Inside, Mrs. Alvarez was waiting with soup because she had apparently decided legal warfare required broth. Rachel sat at the kitchen table while Margaret watched the recovered footage remotely. The house was warm. Rain tapped the glass. The soup tasted of garlic and patience. For the first time since the edited clip appeared, Rachel felt the floor return beneath her. Daniel had tried to turn one dark window into proof that she was unstable. Now the street itself had answered. Chapter 15. Evan Reed broke faster than Daniel. That did not surprise Margaret. Assistants are often where arrogance goes to die, she said. Evan's attorney contacted Margaret 2 days after receiving the preservation notice. The letter was careful. Evan had followed instructions. Evan had believed the matter concerned a family property dispute. Evan wished to correct the record. Rachel read it with no pity at first. Then a little. Not enough to make her foolish. The meeting took place in a small conference room, neutral and bland. Evan looked younger than Rachel remembered. Without Daniel's glossy office behind him, he seemed nervous, thin, and badly rested. A red mark sat near his collar where he had rubbed his neck too often. He did not look at Rachel when he entered. That told her more than an apology would have. Margaret began with the facts. Evan had filmed the front steps from the sidewalk. Evan had clipped the video. Evan had sent it to Daniel. Evan had later posted it anonymously to a private industry forum after Daniel said in writing that Rachel's public posture needed to be balanced before she weaponized sympathy. Evan swallowed hard when Margaret read the phrase, balanced, weaponized sympathy. Daniel had always made cruelty sound managerial. Rachel sat very still. Evan finally looked at her. I was told you were trying to destroy the firm. Rachel folded her hands on the table. Did you ask why? Mr. Bennett said it was personal. It was personal. He was in my bedroom with another woman. Evan's face went pale. His attorney touched his sleeve, a warning to stay quiet. But the damage had already landed where it needed to. Evan had not known the full story. That did not absolve him. It did make him useful. He produced emails, messages, and a voice memo Daniel had sent after the Crescent board meeting. In it, Daniel's voice sounded clipped and furious. Rachel did not hear the whole memo. She did not need to. Margaret played only the relevant section. She cannot be allowed to own the narrative, Daniel said on the recording. If people see her as betrayed, we lose everything. Make it look like she acted first. Make it look like she acted first. Rachel's breath stopped for one beat. There was the heart of it. Daniel did not need strangers to believe he had done nothing. He only needed them to believe Rachel had done too much. The old story. A woman could be hurt, as long as she did not inconvenience anyone with the evidence. After the meeting, Evan stood near the door while his attorney packed papers. Mrs. Bennett, he said quietly, I am sorry. Rachel looked at him. He seemed frightened of her answer. You helped a man punish me for noticing what he did, she said. His eyes dropped. Do better with the next powerful person who asks you to hurt someone smaller. Evan nodded once, miserable. Rachel left with Margaret. Outside, the air was sharp and clear. Rachel pulled her coat around herself. Was that enough? She asked. Margaret glanced at the folder under her arm. It is more than enough. Then why do I still feel angry? Because evidence does not remove harm, it only prevents the harm from winning. Rachel carried that sentence home. The next filing changed everything. Margaret attached the recovered street footage, Daniel's email distributing the edited clip, Evan's sworn statement, the voice memo transcript, and the false furniture work order. She did not use dramatic language. She did not need to. Daniel withdrew the psychological evaluation demand within 48 hours. His attorney requested a private settlement conference. Patricia stopped calling. The gossip accounts deleted the clip, though not before issuing vague statements about incomplete information. The Arts newsletter published a correction so bloodless it barely deserved the name, but Helena made sure everyone who mattered saw the evidence package. Rachel did not post anything. She did not make a triumphant statement. She did not sit for an interview. She simply let the people who had questioned her watch the facts arrive in order. That was enough. Almost. Daniel still had one more attempt. It came at the private settlement conference. He arrived thinner, eyes shadowed, jaw tight. His suit was expensive, but the collar sat wrong. He looked like a man who had slept in rooms where no one adjusted the thermostat for him. Rachel noticed the thought and let it pass. Pity could be a door. She was no longer leaving doors open out of habit. Daniel's attorney spoke first. He conceded several points. No psychological evaluation, no claim to the house, no Crescent-related damages, no unsupervised inventory, no public statements about Rachel's mental health, a mutual non-disparagement clause narrowly written. Margaret listened with the stillness of a judge and the appetite of a blade. Then Daniel asked to speak. The room became colder. Rachel nodded once. Daniel looked at her, not at Margaret. I did not think it would go this far. That was almost funny. Rachel did not laugh. Which part? His mouth tightened. Any of it. The affair, the proposal, the video, the movers, the attempt to have me evaluated? Each phrase landed like a file being placed on a table. Daniel looked away after the fourth. I panicked. No, Rachel said. You planned badly. Margaret's pen stopped moving. Daniel's attorney closed his eyes for half a second. Rachel continued, voice level. Panic is what happens in a moment. You made choices over weeks. You chose to lie about Chicago. You chose to bring Vivian into my room. You chose to turn off cameras. You chose to call me unstable before I had even decided what to do. You chose to use my house in a proposal. You chose to send a clipped video to protect your reputation. You chose to send movers to my door. Daniel's face had gone gray. I know. I am saying this once because after today I do not want to keep explaining the obvious. I am not divorcing you because you made a mistake. I am divorcing you because your first instinct after hurting me was to make sure no one believed me. The sentence changed the room. Even Daniel's attorney stopped pretending to sort papers. Daniel stared at the table. For a moment, Rachel saw the man she had married, not the polished consultant, not the cornered liar. The man who had once stood in her kitchen tasting sauce from a wooden spoon, grinning because he had added too much salt and hoped charm would fix dinner. That memory hurt. Then it settled. A memory was not a claim. Daniel said, I do not know how to come back from this. Rachel believed him. She also knew it was no longer her job to draw the map. You begin by telling the truth when it no longer helps you, she said. He looked at her then. His eyes were wet, but no tear fell. She felt something loosen in herself. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but the need to make him understand began to loosen. He understood enough. He had just preferred advantage. The conference ended with terms Daniel would not have accepted a month earlier. He signed the framework before leaving. His hand shook slightly when he passed the page back to his attorney. Rachel signed after Margaret reviewed each line. Outside the building, Margaret suggested a car. Rachel chose to walk 2 blocks first. The city moved around her. Office workers hurried past with phones against their ears. A cyclist cursed at a delivery van. Steam rose from a grate. Normal life, rude and indifferent and strangely comforting. Rachel stopped at a crosswalk. Her phone buzzed. A message from Helena. Board saw the final evidence summary. Daniel's firm has withdrawn from all Crescent-related bids. You may breathe now if you remember how. Rachel read it twice. Then she did breathe. In. Out. The light changed. She crossed. Chapter 16. Rachel returned to the primary bedroom for good in late autumn. Not because she felt ready in a grand way. Because one night she climbed the stairs, saw the guest room bed, and realized she was tired of exiling herself from her own life. The bedroom had changed slowly. The robe was gone. She donated it after letting it sit in a sealed bag for a month. The sheets were new. The bedside tables were rearranged. Daniel's books were boxed. Vivian's shadow had begun to fade, not because Rachel forgot, but because she had placed other things over it. On the first night back, she slept badly. On the second, slightly better. On the third, she woke before dawn and realized she had not dreamed about the light. That morning, she opened the curtains and let pale sun fill the room. The house felt different without Daniel. At first, empty. Then spacious. Then, slowly, honest. Rachel began hosting Sunday breakfast for herself. Not guests, not donors, not board members. Just coffee, toast, eggs, and music her grandmother would have called too modern despite being 30 years old. She moved her desk into the small library and turned Daniel's former study into a room for Foundation Fellows. Helena Price sent 3 young arts administrators to use it twice a week, all brilliant, underpaid, and too polite until Rachel told them the house had survived worse than coffee rings. The house began to breathe again. One Saturday, Mrs. Alvarez found Rachel in the hallway holding a paint sample. Changing the bedroom? Maybe. Good, that color is too polite. Rachel looked at the pale beige wall. Can a color be too polite? This one apologized before I entered. Rachel laughed. She painted the room deep green. It took 2 weekends, 1 ruined sweater, and a brief argument with painter's tape. When it was done, the bedroom no longer looked like a place arranged for Daniel's approval. It looked like a room where a woman could sleep without asking who she was meant to be. Still, healing did not arrive because the paint dried. That was the part Rachel had to learn with some embarrassment. She had imagined that once the evidence was gathered and the lies were cornered, her body would understand that the danger had passed. Instead, her body remained an archivist of old alarms. A floorboard creaked and she listened. A car door closed outside and her shoulders tightened. A delivery notice appeared on her phone and, for one hard second, she expected another truck on her steps with another false order. The house was safe. She knew that. Knowing did not always reach the nervous system on time. One night she woke at 2:15 because the hall light flickered during a storm. She sat up so quickly the sheet fell from her shoulder. Her heart hammered with the same old message. Someone is here. No one was. She checked the security app. Front door locked, side gate locked, cameras active, hallway empty, garden still. Then she saw her own reflection in the dark phone screen, eyes wide, hair loose, jaw clenched as if bracing for a verdict. Rachel lowered the phone. For the first time, she felt angry not at Daniel's current actions, but at the afterlife of them. He had left, yet his choices still borrowed seconds from her sleep. He had signed away claims, yet his lies still made ordinary noises sound like warnings. That anger was different. Cleaner. It did not ask what she had done wrong, it asked what she needed now. The next day, Rachel did something that felt almost silly. She walked through the house with Mrs. Alvarez and named each room out loud. Kitchen. Library. Guest room. Foundation room. Primary bedroom. Mrs. Alvarez followed with a duster tucked under one arm, not laughing, not pitying her. At the primary bedroom door, Rachel stopped. "My room," she said. The words came out too softly. Mrs. Alvarez lifted one eyebrow. Rachel tried again. "My room." Better. Not theatrical. True. They changed small things after that. The hallway light was replaced. The side gate code changed again, even though it had already been changed once. Rachel bought a new brass key bowl for the entry table and threw away the old one Daniel used to empty his pockets into at night. None of these actions would matter in court. They mattered in the body. They told the house a new routine. They told Rachel one too. Vivian sent one more letter in December. It came through counsel, sealed, short, and written in a careful hand. She had been asked by Daniel to testify that Rachel had exaggerated the bedroom incident. She refused. She had also resigned from a committee where Daniel's mother still held influence because Patricia had called her ungrateful for not protecting the family. Rachel read the letter twice. Then she placed it in the case file, not the memory drawer. That distinction mattered. Vivian was part of the record. She would not be allowed to remain part of Rachel's daily life. Near Christmas, Patricia sent a gift basket to the townhouse. Pears, wine, ribbon, a handwritten card wishing Rachel peace. Rachel looked at it for almost a full minute. Then she asked the courier to return it. The man's pen hovered over his tablet. Reason? Rachel thought about all the possible answers. False concern. Bad timing. Poisoned civility. Instead, she said, refused by recipient. Simple words were often enough. During this time, the divorce moved forward. Daniel's settlement posture weakened after Vivian's sworn statement. His business did not collapse, but Crescent was gone, and 2 clients delayed contracts after the arts column expanded into a more detailed piece about unauthorized venue claims. He blamed Rachel through counsel once. Margaret replied with one paragraph so cold Rachel wanted to frame it. By December, Daniel stopped blaming her in writing. That counted as growth or strategy. Rachel did not care which. Chapter 17. The final divorce hearing took place in January. Snow lined the courthouse steps in dirty white ridges. Rachel wore a wool coat, black gloves, and the small emerald ring her grandmother had left her. Not a wedding ring, a family ring. Something older than Daniel, older than the marriage, older than the version of herself who had stood in the rain watching a dark window. Daniel arrived alone. No Vivian. No mother. No practiced entourage of concern. He looked tired, not destroyed, just reduced from the scale he once imagined for himself. The hearing was brief. The house remained Rachel's separate property. Each kept personal accounts as defined by the prenuptial agreement. Shared items were divided by inventory. Daniel withdrew any claims connected to Crescent losses. No direct contact except through counsel for remaining logistics. Clean terms for an unclean ending. When the judge signed, Rachel expected a feeling. Relief, perhaps. Victory. Grief. Instead, she felt quiet. Outside the courtroom, Daniel asked for 1 minute. Margaret gave Rachel the look that meant absolutely not, unless you insist, in which case I will stand close enough to ruin his mood. Rachel nodded once. Daniel stood near the courthouse window. Snowlight made his face look older. I am sorry, he said. She waited. Not for getting caught, for making you feel like your own house was not safe. The sentence reached her because it was specific. Daniel swallowed. And for using the Crescent proposal, that was ugly. Yes. He almost smiled, then did not. I told myself you would say no if I asked, so it was easier to let the room expect it. Rachel looked at him. There it was, the truth beneath so many arguments. You used my kindness as a signature. His face tightened. Yes. The admission did not repair anything. But it placed the truth down between them without decoration. Thank you for saying it, Rachel said. Does it change anything? No. He nodded. That hurt him. She saw it. She did not soften it. Goodbye, Daniel. Goodbye, Rachel. He walked away first. Rachel stood by the window until Margaret came beside her. You all right? Rachel watched Daniel disappear into the stairwell. I think so. That sounded almost honest. It was. Disturbing. Rachel smiled. Outside, snow fell harder, softening the city without hiding it. Chapter 18. Spring returned to Maple Crescent in small, stubborn ways. First the boxwoods brightened. Then the climbing roses along the back wall sent out new leaves. Then Rachel found herself buying flowers for the bedroom without thinking of Vivian, Daniel, or the night the light went dark. That felt important. Not dramatic. Important. She did not begin a new life with a plane ticket, a makeover, or a man waiting under better lighting. She began it by making coffee in her own kitchen and realizing she liked the silence. She began it by sleeping through the night, by hosting 2 foundation fellows for lunch, by throwing away a chipped mug Daniel loved because she had always hated it, and marriage was no longer a reason to keep ugly things. The Crescent project continued without Daniel's firm. Another studio took over, a quieter one. Less glossy, more careful. Rachel liked them. Helena pretended not to, which meant she did. At the first public preview, Rachel stood in the renovated lobby of an old theater that would soon become a community arts center. The walls had been restored, the ceiling repaired. Children's drawings from neighborhood workshops hung along one side. Helena found her near the staircase. Your grandmother would be smug. Proud? Smug first, proud privately. Rachel laughed. Across the room, a young architect explained the design to donors. No one mentioned Daniel. No one mentioned the withdrawn proposal. The work had outgrown the scandal. Rachel realized she had too. That evening, she walked home instead of calling a car. The air was cool. Windows glowed along Maple Crescent. When her townhouse came into view, the bedroom light was on. For 1 second, her body remembered. The taxi, the rain, the light going dark. Then she remembered she had left the lamp on herself. She stopped on the sidewalk and looked up. Warm light filled the room behind green curtains. No shadow moved there except her own, reflected faintly from the street. Rachel walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and entered the house. Inside, everything was still. Not secretive. Still. She went upstairs, took off her coat, and stood in the bedroom doorway. The deep green walls held the lamplight beautifully. On the dresser sat a photograph of her grandmother, one eyebrow lifted as if judging the paint job and approving despite herself. Rachel touched the frame. "I did not cave," she said softly. The house gave no answer. It did not need to. Chapter 19. 1 year after the light went dark, Rachel hosted a dinner in the townhouse. Not a donor salon, not an intimate patron experience, not a backdrop for anyone's ambition. A dinner. Helena came. Margaret came. Mrs. Alvarez came and criticized the salad while eating 2 servings. 3 foundation fellows came, along with a young playwright whose work Rachel had helped fund. The table was loud, imperfect, and full of people who did not treat the house as access to something else. For dessert, Rachel served pear tart. She had not planned the symbolism until the bakery box was in her hands. Then she decided not all symbols needed avoiding. Some could be reclaimed with butter and sugar. Margaret noticed immediately. Bold pastry choice. Do not make it legal. I make everything legal. Helena tasted the tart. Too sweet. Mrs. Alvarez said, "You say that about everything except revenge." The table laughed. Rachel laughed too. It felt easy. After dinner, while guests moved into the living room, Rachel stepped into the hall. The staircase lamp glowed softly. The front camera chimed as someone left. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Her phone buzzed. A message from Vivian's attorney forwarding a final note. Vivian had moved to another city. She had completed her statement obligations. She wanted Rachel to know she had returned the copy of the house key Daniel had once given her for emergencies. Rachel stared at that line. A key. Another door he had opened without asking. Anger rose, then passed more quickly than it once would have. The locks had been changed long ago. The note could not enter. Rachel archived it and returned to the dining room. Later, after everyone left, she walked through the house, turning off lights. Kitchen, library, hall, guest bath, living room. Each switch clicked softly. At the bedroom door, she paused. Then she left that light on. Not because she feared the dark. Because she liked the glow. She changed into pajamas, washed her face, and got into bed beneath clean white sheets. Outside, the city settled. Inside, the room held no secret. Rachel looked at the lamp and smiled. The night that once ended her marriage had also ended a habit she had mistaken for love. The habit of explaining away disrespect. The habit of staying quiet so someone else could stay comfortable. The habit of leaving her own instincts outside the door. That was over. She reached for the switch. Then she stopped. For 1 more minute, she let the light stay on. Chapter 20. The next morning, Rachel woke early. Sunlight had replaced the lamp. The room looked ordinary. No revelation, no cinematic ending, just pale light across the floor and the distant sound of a garbage truck turning the corner. She made coffee and stood barefoot in the kitchen while it brewed. On the counter lay a folder from Margaret containing final house records, updated security permissions, and the last inventory agreement. Rachel signed where needed, read twice because old lessons deserved respect, and placed everything in a drawer. Then she opened the back door. The garden smelled like wet soil and roses. For a long time, she stood there with her coffee cooling in her hands. People like to say betrayal changed everything. It did, but not always in the way they meant. Betrayal did not make Rachel stronger by magic. It did not turn pain into instant wisdom. It did not make the woman in the mirror unbreakable. It made her honest. Honest about the rooms where she had been shrinking. Honest about the way Daniel used charm as a rope. Honest about how often she had chosen peace that only benefited the person hurting her. That honesty hurt. Then it freed. Rachel looked up at the third-floor bedroom window from the garden. In daylight, it was just glass. No mystery, no darkened lamp, no shadow moving behind the curtain. Just a window in a house that was hers. She raised her mug toward it in a small private toast. To the light that went out. To the woman who did not rush in blindly. To the truth that waited behind the dark. And to the morning after, when she finally understood that a home is not safe because nobody betrays you there. It is safe when, after betrayal, you still know it belongs to you.